Hey everyone, Austin here, and welcome to the video. Today I want to share with you level 5 leadership, ruthless versus rigorous, and then building a flywheel. And these concepts are all pulled from this book right here, which is Jim Colins' Good to Great. And I'm excited to jump into this one. I also have a couple of other books that we're going to be talking about here sometime in the future. We've already talked about this one. This is Dr. Peter Drucker's The Effective Executive. I read this one yesterday, which is The 7 Strategies of Wealth by Jim Rohn. Can't go wrong with listening or reading a book by Jim Rohn. And then I don't remember if I've read this one. He has a couple of the law of insert different names of titles that he has. I think I've read this one though. This is Napoleon Hill's The Law of Success, which I have actually read this one. Slam dunk of a book, just to be honest with you. But you can see here we got a lot of books coming up. So if you like learning from books, you can join my email newsletter, my Book of the Day newsletter, or feel free to subscribe to me wherever you are watching this video. The reason why I make these videos is because it helps me learn and digest the books that I'm reading. And I just find that if I talk about them real quick on a quick video, that it helps me remember the information, AKA I actually learn what I read because, reading is one thing, but retaining is another thing. And this helps me retain. So thank you for being here. And I hope that something that we talk about today might spark something inside of you and get you to go out there and improve your life and your business. And that would be incredible. So I figure might as well just post this out there and see if it helps anyone. But anyway, so we'll go ahead and jump back into this. So a couple of things. This book is great because at the end of every chapter, it has chapter summaries. And I really like chapter summaries because once you get done reading a chapter, it's nice to be able to, go back and kind of, recap what you just got done reading. And again, that helps with the retention of reading stuff. So that's a great thing about this book. And you should, consider picking up a copy. This is a very famous, popular book. One of the points is, so you get to the end of the chapter, the good to great leaders began the transformation by first getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus, and then figured out where to drive it. So this is one that's talking more about the who. And I think it was yesterday or a couple days ago, we read a book called Who, which was all about how it's not about what we do, but it's about who we have do it. AKA the people that are involved in our companies and our organizations and in our lives, that's what makes the difference, because A players are always going to do A performance work. And so if we can just get more A players onto our team, we're naturally going to win and do better because we're just going to have the right people, which is great. So anyways, I'll set that aside here. We'll kind of go through some of the notes. So the first one that I have for you is that the difference between good and great is that great companies have strong, humble leaders who focus on long-term success and put the company's needs above their own. Great companies also make smart, disciplined decisions, hire the right people, and maintain a simple, clear vision, while good companies may lack these qualities and remain average. So there's not a huge difference here, except for based on the research that Jim Colins did in this book, by studying the top companies and seeing the difference between the ones that made it and did great and the ones that did or made it for a while and then they fizzled out. The difference really came down to pretty much the people that were involved in those organizations, which is pretty interesting. So anyway, so we talked about that. Now, the first concept that I'll talk to you about today is level 5 leadership. So a level 5 leader is someone who combines personal humility with intense professional will. They are modest and don't seek attention, but they are determined and focused on making their company successful above all else. That's what a level 5 leader is. And in the book, Jim Colins talks about how all of the companies that were very, very, very successful, they all had level 5 leaders. And so what they determined in the book was a successful company was a company that did well during a certain period of time based on the conditions of that period of time. So for example, if they were in a period of time where the market was going down and things were really hard, but the leaders kept their companies going pretty okay, or maybe even doing pretty good during those times, that would be excellent, right? Because there's companies that do really, really good in times when everybody does good because the market is going well, right? So that's kind of the context on how they, measured and determined some of the stuff when they were doing their research. And so level 5 leaders were involved on all the businesses that were very successful. And one question that they were asked is that, can anyone become a level 5 leader? And what's crazy is that the answer is that they don't really know. They're not for sure. Because there's a lot of things that go into these people that were the level 5 leaders in the books. But one thing that they did know for sure, because what they're saying there is that they're not sure if some people are just born to be a level 5 leader. There might be something there that is given to them at birth, basically. It's something that they're born with. Okay, but don't worry if you feel like maybe you weren't born with it or not, because although they couldn't confirm it or deny it. So it is possible that anyone can become a level 5 leader. And it's also possible that maybe there's something that's given to us at birth that really allows us to be the best of the best when it comes to being a level 5 leader. But there was one thing that was absolutely for sure that they talked about in the book. And that is that anyone can work towards level 5 leadership. And so I'm going to give you a couple of things that they talked about. And these are the character traits, right? If we want to become somebody and achieve a certain goal, it's really good for us to, we can't really say, okay, I'm going to accomplish the same things that they accomplished, right? Even though those could be goals of ours. What's a good thing to do is say, hey, I'm going to implement the systems and the character traits and the way that the things that they do, the things that they listen to, who they hang out with, the actions that they took. I'm going to implement those things into my life today so that over a long enough period of time, I can get the same results that they got, right? Or similar results. And so here's a few of the things that they found in the level 5 leaders. So one was personal humility. So they showed modesty. They did not seek personal recognition or attention. In fact, they actually pushed it away. If a level 5 leader was receiving praise, they would literally say, look at my team, look at my company. How could I not succeed? They would take the praise and they would push it on to others, right? And so personal humility was in everybody. And then they said on the flip side of that, there were level 4 leaders or 3 leaders or whatever. And they always just took the praise and they said, yeah, I am the best. Yeah, it was hard, but I did it, right? I did it, right? They're using a lot of I language, where a level 5 leader uses we language, us language, our language, right? The difference there is that they're saying we did it, not me, not I, but we did it as a team, right? But then when it came to problems, they would take full responsibility. So if there was a problem, they would say, I take full responsibility. They wouldn't say it's because of them, it's because of them, it's because of them. They would say it's because of me. So they would take full responsibility. And then when they won big time, they would take group, they would pass it on to the group. So naturally, their people under them love them and push them forward. So if you want one simple thing you can do today to become a level 5 leader and get everything that you want in life and more, stop saying I and start saying we. Even if it is you. A lot of the times in the book, it was because of the people that were leading it. It was really because of them. But they never accepted that. They always pushed it off onto the team so that everybody got the credit. And that just made them go even further. So if you want to, have a way to become a level 5 leader, stop saying I, start saying we, and take full responsibility for everything that's going on in your life that is negative. Okay, so that's number 1. The next is professional will. Demonstrate intense determination to achieve the company's success. They were very determined. You could not take them off the track. They were going to win no matter what. And so they had a very strong professional will. The next is that they focused on the company. There were situations where they could have sold the company or taken the company public, and it would have made them, the leader, the CEO, very, very wealthy. But a level 5 leader puts the company above their own financial interest in any circumstance, under every circumstance. And so there were situations where the company they did not take the company public because it wasn't in the best interest of the company. Even though it would have made the CEO look good and made them very, very wealthy, They did not do it, and they decided to say, no, we're not going to do that right now. We're going to do this because this is what's good for the company long term. And so thinking long term and focusing on others around you and the company that you either own or work for, and putting them above yourself under all circumstances is another thing that makes a level 5 leader. The next is leading by example. Inspire others through consistent discipline actions and decisions, right? This goes without saying. They led by example. They walked the walk. They talked the talk. They weren't a different person on Monday morning and Saturday night, right? And so they were the same person all day, every day, 365 days per year. There was no other fake person that they were being. They were them the whole time, and they led by example. Okay, and then they had long-term vision, which we kind of talked a little bit, but they maintained a steadfast commitment to the company's long-term success regardless of difficulties. So even when things got hard, they still stood out and they kept working hard no matter what. Okay, so that's a little bit about becoming a level 5 leader. If you want more information, get a copy of this book because you're going to want that. This is a good one to read once a year, once every other year. This is always a good one to go back to. Okay, now the next one was a term that I really liked reading from this, and I've read this book before in the past, but I read it again recently. And it's the idea of ruthless versus rigorous, and there is a major difference. And the level 5 leaders were very rigorous, and the level 4 leaders and below were very ruthless, and there's a difference between the two. So ruthless, this means cutting and firing people without thoughtful consideration, especially during tough times. It involves warranted actions that lack compassion and respect for the individuals affected, right? So it's like, things get hard, let's go fire a bunch of people. That's what a level 4 leader would do, okay? Or a level 3 or 2 or whatever. Okay, and then a rigorous, though, this is good. This involves consistently applying high standards and making tough decisions with careful thought and fairness. Rigorous actions are aimed at achieving excellence while ensuring people are treated with respect and given clarity about their status. Okay, so what's the difference there? It's huge. Would you rather work for a ruthless employer or a ruthless company or a rigorous one? Right? We should, and these two can kind of get mixed sometimes. Sometimes when people are being rigorous with us, we're thinking that they're being ruthless, and vice versa. And so, we really want to work towards being rigorous. We want to have high standards. We want to make tough decisions because that's what a level 5 leader does. We want to be thoughtful and careful. We want to be fair, but we also want to aim to win. And we want to put the company above ourselves. And sometimes that means we got to let people go. Sometimes that means we got to promote certain people. Sometimes that means we need to stand still. And sometimes that means we need to move forward. But no matter what, we want to be working for whatever is the best for the company and the community involved. So there's 5 ideas here to become more rigorous and less ruthless. So number 1 is setting clear expectations. If you can clearly communicate performance standards and expectations to all team members, we're going to have a lot easier time when it comes to following up on those expectations. Are we hitting the goals that were set? Are we hitting the metrics? Why aren't we? Right? So setting clear expectations is great. The next is to provide regular feedback. Get in the habit of providing feedback to your team. Say, hey, I really liked what you did. Hey, can you tell me a little bit more about why it looked like this? I kind of thought a few things were a bit interesting here. I'd like to talk more about it. If you get into a regular habit about doing that, then when you need to have a very tough conversation, it's not going to be the first conversation you've had with them about performance, right? Because you've had them before, then you're going to be able to come in and actually get something done when you talk to them face to face. Okay, support development. Invest in training and development opportunities to help employees meet high standards. I love this one. Basically, yes, of course, invest into training and all that kind of stuff. You can also just care about them, right? What's going on outside of their life? Do they have a doctor appointment that they have to go take their kid to and they need to get off work early? Work with them. Let them go do it, right? Make it work. Is your job that you're hiring them for, is that just kind of a temporary job and they're working to go towards something else? Support them. Don't feel like we need to, and I can only say this because I've had employees, right? I never thought that when I had employees that I owned them and that they needed to work for me and serve me only. That would be ridiculous. Absolutely not. No, I hope that they work with me forever. And whether it's at this company or the next company or another company, great. But if they need to go out onto their own, it was my goal to support them and make sure that when they left me, they left way better than where they were at. And so support them in everything that they do. Okay, make thoughtful decisions, consider a long-term impact and fairness when making tough decisions about roles and responsibilities. Sometimes we got to make tough decisions, and it's hard, and there's a lot of things that go into it. Not only business decisions, but people are involved, especially if you have to let somebody go. They have a family, they have bills, they might have moved here to work for you. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. That doesn't mean we don't want to make those hard decisions, but we want to be as careful and as empathetic as possible, because it's people we're dealing with, right? And we're in the business about changing lives, not hurting lives. Okay, and then foster a respectful culture. Us as the leader, me as the leader, you as the leader, we determine what our culture is like. Do we want a culture where everybody's gossiping and talking behind the back? Do we want a culture where we talk and promote innovation? Absolutely. That's what we want. We don't want a culture where people are gossiping and feeling like they can't talk to their boss and stuff like that. Absolutely not. We don't want that. We want a community where people can talk and we can be not ruthless, but rigorous. We want to be thorough and we want to be considerate, but we want to win. We want to get the job done. If we have to have some tough conversations, we just got to have those tough conversations. Okay, the next point, and that last point was ruthless versus rigorous. Now I want to talk about building a flywheel. So the flywheel is a concept where great results come from a series of small, consistent efforts that build momentum over time. So instead of one big action or sudden change, it's about pushing a giant heavy flywheel, right? Do you know what a flywheel is? It's like a wheel, and it's on like a bolt or a bearing. And, it's pretty heavy, but once you kind of get it spinning a little bit in that direction, then it finally starts going around and around, and then it just keeps going, and keeping it spinning is a lot easier, right? So it's about pushing a giant heavy flywheel in one direction, turn after turn after turn, until it gains unstoppable momentum and leads to a breakthrough. So how can one build a flywheel? Well, there's a lot that probably goes into it. And here are a few points from the book, Good to Great by Jim Colins, that kind of talk a little bit more about it. So number one is start small. Begin with small, consistent actions that align with your goals and your values. Everyone and everything always starts small. So if we start small, that's going to be probably the first step, right? Just get started and start small. The next is as important and very interesting. It's stay consistent, right? So we all struggle probably with staying consistent. Consistency is pretty tough, but we want to maintain a steady effort and discipline even when progress seems slow. Who here has started something and then 2 weeks later, you're kind of tired and sad about it because nothing happened? It's only been 2 weeks. Sometimes we do things and they don't work for 10 years, but on year 11, they work. I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes obviously we need to pivot and change our strategy, but sometimes we might not be seeing results, but we just got to keep going. We just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. It's little by little we get ahead, not necessarily in fast sprints. That's what Charlie Munger says. Okay, so then let's see here what we talk about. So focus on results. Oh, that's where we're at. Focus on results. So measure and celebrate small wins to build confidence and momentum. Right? So what gets measured gets managed. If you're going to be starting something and you have a goal, you got to set the goal. And then what are the metrics that are involved for you hitting that goal? And so focus on the results that are coming from your efforts that you're doing and celebrate the wins along the way. Next is adapt and improve. This is possibly the most important one. Anybody can start small. Anybody can be consistent too, even though it's much harder mentally. Anybody can look at the results. But we need to adapt sometimes, and we need to improve. This is where it actually either dies or lives. And, we're going to go out there, we're going to do a bunch of repetitions, and we're not going to see the results that we want. Then, because we were focusing on the results in the last step, then we're going to be able to look at what's happened, what we've done and what's happened. And then at that point, we need to adapt and we need to do it again. This is a never-ending process. But what happens is a lot of times is people start something, they don't see the results they want, then they quit. Okay, so we need to start something. Then the next step is to stay consistent. We just talked about that. If we do that, we'll get a little bit further. But if we don't focus on the results and we don't adapt and improve, then it dies there too. Okay, so we need to not only start small and stay consistent, we also need to focus on the results, aka we need to be tracking what we're doing. Because if we do that and we start small, we stay consistent, and we focus on our results because we're tracking it, but we don't adapt and improve, the whole thing dies there. So that's 3 steps deep that we're doing stuff here. We need the 4th one, which is to adapt and improve. Okay, so and then build on success. Once you finally find something that works, do not stop it. Entrepreneurs have this thing, myself included, by the way, where we find something that works and then we get such a dopamine rush from having that success that we move on to the next thing. That's not what we want to do. Is if we find something that works, we need to bring it home, and we need to do it over and over again and never let off the gas pedal. We can't say we're tired. We can't say we're burnt out. We can't say we don't want to do it anymore. It's time to bring it home. We found something that works. No, we just need to do it over and over and over and over and over again. Okay. Lastly, as we wrap up here, if you are feeling spread thin, a lot of these companies started out with a lot of different businesses that were within it, like Walgreens example. Okay. So here's what's interesting. A lot of these companies, they had a bunch of things that were going on inside of them. Walgreens, they had like I think a restaurant, they had like a milkshake thing that was involved. They had all these different things that were going on. And a great leader came in and they said, no, we need to focus on just being this type of store that we need to be. And we need to kill the other things that are going on. Okay, I don't have it on here, but if you've been with me and you've read The One Thing by Gary Keller or Essentialism by Greg McKeown, it talks about that we can't really focus on more than one thing. But sometimes when we're starting out, we got a lot of things going on, and sometimes we just gotta do a bunch of stuff. And I know that goes against The One Thing. I know that it goes against Essentialism, but those books were written by people that were further along in their career. They were not at the beginning of their career. I'm sure that The One Thing by Gary Keller, I'm sure that Gary Keller, he didn't implement The One Thing until he already had a big company. When he implemented The One Thing, he already had a really big brokerage. He had a big company. And so these strategies were implemented a little bit later. And you can see, and it was implemented later in this book too. Walgreens was already a big thing. They had like 500 restaurants or something. I mean, it was a crazy number. They were bringing in like $1 billion+ in revenue from their restaurants. And so anyway, so they killed all of them. They had to shut down like 500 restaurants in 5 years or something like that. I forget the exact numbers, but if you read the book, you'll be able to figure out those stats yourselves. Why am I bringing this up? Because if you're feeling spread thin, the good news is you can temporarily, not for a long-term strategy, do a lot of stuff. And sometimes we have to do a lot of things because we don't know what works out, especially if we're just working. If you've been doing things for a long time and you've tested a lot of things, you might know something that works. But right now, if you're just starting out, you might not know what works. So you might need to just get a lot of things going, do a ton of actions. And over time, when you find something that works, remember, we started small, we stayed consistent, we focused on results, we studied the metrics, we adapted and we improved, and then we build on our success. So when you do a lot of things, if you're trying this thing over here, you're working this job over here and trying this thing online, one of them is going to work. And you need to hang in there and get one of them to work. And you do that by the starting small, consistent results, and then the adaption. That's where you go back and test it again. You can do a lot of things, figure out what works, adapt. Once you find kind of the main thing that is bringing in the most results and is most aligned with what you want to do, right? That's when you want to implement the One Thing and the Essentialism methods that are talked about in those books. But sometimes when you're just starting out, starting from the bottom, you just got to grind it out. But when you find something that works, then you want to start to kill the other things. Walgreens killed 500 restaurants roughly in about 5 years. That's a lot. And it was like $1 billion+ in revenue that they killed because they wanted to focus on running the stores that they were wanting to create. They wanted to get focused on their business, and it was the right decision. So when you're starting out, sometimes you got to do a lot of things, but when you start to figure out what works, slowly kill off everything else, and then scale up that one thing. You can always add in other things later. He who chases two birds catches none. And that's true. But sometimes when we're starting out, we still got to hit the gas and get a couple of things going, and then we'll figure out what to really focus on in the future, right? And hopefully it's not for too long because it's harder to do a lot of stuff. All right, guys, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for stopping by, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.